techniques which were available, the techniques for glucose monitoring which were available before the advent of CGM, we could not keep on checking the blood sugars constantly. Now, CGM device is a very innovative device where there's a small microfilament which goes underneath the skin into the interstitial fluid. It comes with a device, it comes with a chemical reaction inside, and it is like a 2 rupee coin. And you can apply it like a sticker here on the arm, and the filament keeps on sampling the interstitial fluid every 15 minutes, and it generates a signal. Now the signal is transferred into via NFC into either a sensor or a mobile application, which can translate that signal into finally a glucose reading. Now, the advantage of doing this is once you apply this device, then you get a continuous stream of data. It is like a movie kind of data which you get throughout the day. The typical devices from Abbott, they function for about 14 days, and each day you get 96 readings. So total of 1346 blood sugar readings you get over a period of 14 days. Now, in the initial part of when the CGM arrived, the devices were not very accurate, and these devices are calculated on their accuracy by a term called MARD. So the MARD of initial devices of CGM 20 years back was close to 20%. It means that if a blood sugar on the device is showing to be 100, it can be anywhere between 80 to 120, which is not very good for a clinical usage. It can be used for trends, but not good enough for a clinical use. But the latest generation of devices which have come, all of them have a MARD of under 10, which is 9 to 10%, like the Abbott Freestyle, which we use in our programs. So once you apply the device, the first usage of this device, once the MARD came under 10, was to help people with type 1 diabetes and also to change the therapy for type 2 diabetes. Suppose a doctor saw from the CGM data that the blood sugars are going up post meals, they would add a medication so that post meal rise of blood sugar is lesser. Or if there is a early morning hypoglycemia, and then the nocturnal dose of medicine needs to be adjusted, or if there is a continuous fasting hypoglycemia, then that dose can be adjusted, which is the night dose. So all those medication adjustment was the primary use of CGM. But now, with the availability of advanced technology like the one we use at Fitterfly, a lot of other companies worldwide are using, is to actually understand how lifestyle changes the blood sugar level. It's not about only the medication. We all know that certain foods have more carbohydrates, and the carbohydrate quality is also different. Then the ratios of carbohydrate to protein, which is the food composition, the ratio of carbohydrate to fats, the ratio of carbohydrate to fibers, all these things impact the amount of blood sugar rise, which is the amplitude of the rise and also the duration of the rise. So all these things get impacted by the food composition. So now the latest theory which is emerging is if we can show this personalized data to every human being having diabetes and influence their behavior about eating food or doing certain kind of exercises which will lower the blood sugars, then this technology itself can become a kind of therapy for helping people with diabetes. So now the latest use of CGM is actually for behavior change, because we know in India people like to eat their food, the favorite foods. But if you can influence their behavior into minor changes, quality, the composition, the pattern, the sequencing of food, the exercise adoption, those minor hacks can actually result in significant lowering of their day-to-day blood sugar, whether it's fasting, whether it's post meals, whether it's throughout the day. And this behavior change, we feel at Fitterfly, is the primary use of CGM, which is going to be.
The potential sounds immense. But Shilpa ma'am, I would like to come to you. Theory is good. Practically, क्या change आया है? How do you think, Shilpa ma'am, that the advent of CGM has changed your practice of counseling the patients? How has it changed the food habits in patients? How has it changed your nutrition therapy that you give?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the question. And like Dr. Arbinder said, MNT becomes an integral part of management of diabetes, and most often than not, CGMS is used to titrate the medication. But what is very interesting to see that CGMS can be really used very effectively, not only to titrate diet, but to titrate all aspects of lifestyle. So you can see an increase in blood glucose if you eat a wrong kind of food, or food that you perceive is correct, but still shows a high blood sugar. So I can give you very commonly given example by all dietitians. Probably idli is touted to be one of the healthiest foods, right? Because it's steamed, it's fat free, so on and so forth. So people will go anywhere and they'll say, oh, we'll not eat fried, we'll not eat other things. Hum idli sambar khayenge. I mean, sab paap dhul gaye, right? That's the understanding. And you see with CGM that sometimes idlis in a lot of people can cause escalation in blood glucose, and then you land up finding a better alternative. Another example is sandwich. Sandwich is something which is very easily available. You see very high rise in blood glucose immediately post eating bakery products. And these are things which people do not realize unless you see it in black and white as a graph on CGMS. Other lifestyle intervention, which is very important, probably which me and Arbinder very often talk about, is just a walk post meal. So a lot of times you see an escalation in blood glucose and then you advise your patients, well, why don't you walk for 15 minutes post meal, and that escalation is sort of flattened. So it's not a huge intervention. It's not about joining a gym, which most of the time people are very apprehensive. First they come to us and say, madam, gym nahi jayenge, वैसे ही कुछ बता दो. So it is very nice to tell them just walk for 15 minutes and your blood sugar rise will be less. But a lot of times this becomes theoretical. When you see it on CGM, how it impacts your graph, then you sort of start following it much better than somebody just instructing you walk after 15 minutes after a meal, because this only next time when you do your fasting PP or HbA1c, do you realize what impact it had? Until then, you were sort of following it half-heartedly. If you knew it real time, sometimes that 15 minutes walk can become 20 minutes. Sometimes, and people also want to get into different regimes. I'm just deviating a slight bit, but they want to do intermittent fasting. They want to avoid carbs somewhere. They want to eat more carbs. All this can be done very, very well if you are using a CGM, assistance of a CGM while you are doing any kind of therapy for diabetes, whether it is drugs, whether it's insulin, or whether it is lifestyle, and all three together as well.
Actually, just borrowing from Shilpa, I wanted to show one slide which will showcase this particular data. Can I do that, Dr. Nilesh?
Please go ahead.
So is my screen visible?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So, this is my own data. When we were building the program with CGM on Fitterfly platform, then I wanted to first check everything on myself because I was having HbA1c of 6.3. And so this is a meal which was given to me in an Air India flight. And immediately post the meal, I was sedentary for 2 hours. So that's the first time I really understood the impact of what happens with different kind of meals. So here the most important thing to note is the carbohydrates are 43 grams and the protein is just 8 gram and fiber is 5 gram. And you can see soft upma, vermicelli upma, butter, croissant, fruit yogurt, multiple meals. So here my starting glucose was around 105, but it went up to 180 and actually stayed above 150 for almost 2 hours. So here the ratio for carbohydrate to protein is actually 1:5, which is a pretty bad ratio, and carbohydrate to fiber is 1:8. If you look at this another meal, here though the ratio is good, but the fat is very high in quantity and fiber is also very high in quantity. So here, because of high carbohydrate load, which is 86 grams of carbohydrate, the rise happened very later, but it did happen up to 150. So with a higher grams of carbs, but higher amount of protein and fat, fiber as well, the rise happened much later and much smaller. So this is how the interaction actually happens in live patient. Now here is another very processed food, a Britannia Nutri-Choice sugar-free cracker. The biggest problem which we see in people with diabetes is the snack time. So snack time is often they choose very unhealthy snacks, and I often hear Shilpa talking about this. So this is just 2 sugar-free crackers. And you can see 13 grams of carb along with the masala tea, but see the sharp rise in blood sugar and the immediate fall to almost 100. So this is a very steep fluctuation in a short period of time. Now the second thing which Shilpa talked about was this particular phenomena, where you can see this meal and this meal both have exactly the same amount of carbohydrate, 41 grams. Protein is also quite the same, 70-80% same. Fiber is same. Calories are almost the same. The only difference is that after this meal, the blood sugar went up to 150. I did not go for a walk. I immediately started attending a meeting. But after this meal, I went for a walk. And you can see when I went for a walk, the blood sugar did not cross 130. Quite similar meals, but this is the impact of small changes. And when you show these changes to the patients with diabetes on their app or on their screen, then next time when they're eating food, one, they know how much their blood sugar is going to rise with various foods. Secondly, they know if they go for even a 5-10 minute walk or a 15-minute walk, the blood sugars would not rise much. And when then they keep on consistently following this habit for 30 days, 60 days, it goes into their DNA. Like my favorite thing is when I'm having my lunch, and after that I immediately go to the room, which is a pretty small room, the meeting room, and I keep moving around the table and making my calls for about 10-15 minutes. I do not sit down immediately post the meal. And when somebody tells me they have an excuse that they cannot go for a walk, I tell them if I can do it in a 5 by 5 meter room, you can also do it anywhere. So small things like this, incorporating physical activity and giving this guidance and power to patients to see their own data and make that behavioral change, it can help us doctors also, because then our patients will have much better control of their blood glucose.
Yeah, sounds very, very interesting, Dr. Arbinder. So, Dr. Shilpa, I wanted to come back to you on this. So, at Fitterfly, we have thousands of patients using CGM every month now. So, what are the kind of questions they come up with when they use CGM and they see in real time the changes happening in their blood glucose because of the food they eat and the what fitness measures they take? What are the kind of questions they come back to you with?
So basically, I would call CGMS as a myth-busting device. So because all of us throughout our life, maybe through our parents, our culture, we get a lot of cultural inputs that, we have been taught since childhood, do roti khaye bina utna nahi, then you have not eaten food. Yeah, Maharashtrians have this whole thing that chawal khaye bina food is not complete. Or, ek aam khane se kuch nahi hota. I think it busts the myth. And I think that is a good way of busting myth, because it, like we always tell everybody, nutrition is very personalized. What may work for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for Dr. Arbinder. So we are all very unique in our own sense. So, a lot of times when patients say that, rice is bad, so I don't eat it, and chapatis are good, so I eat them. Lot of times in CGMS, we see completely opposite things. We see people doing way better on rice than they do on wheat, and we advise them to eat rice. And a lot of times people also come up with things like millets are great for you, and they are good, believe me. But we have seen huge rise in blood glucose post eating millets. So these are questions which come to us very often that, I gave up eating wheat and rice and I went on to eating millets. Then why is my HbA1c not coming in control? And when CGMS is like unraveling the whole thing, that after eating, say, a porridge or a bhakri or a chapati of millets, you see a steep rise in blood glucose. Another thing, a lot of people have myth is eating dals is not good for them. So they think that they'll get hyperuricemia, or they're very heavy to digest. So they'll get gastric issues. And when they see bettering of blood glucoses, it's like a aha moment for them. Or even eating salad, or not eating food and fruit together. So these are kind of things that, sort of becomes very clear once they use CGM. Another thing, like Dr. Arbinder said, the effect of physical activity known is very theoretical. Roj exercise karo, it's very good for you. You don't know what it is good for, right? You're just presuming it is good for you. But when you start seeing the flattening of blood sugar graph, long term, we also speak about strengthening exercises, weights. And a lot of times people don't realize what it does. But once they start doing weights and then they see that the effect of weight training lasts with them for a longer period of time, that really starts working for them. Another thing is stress. So we are at Fitterfly, we have seen impact of stress on CGM, and probably that's the only time you can see impact of stress. So, a lot of times when people are rushing for a meeting, their sugars are high, and post that, when they are sort of quiet and all sorted, their sugars come back to normal. So I think these are theoretical things which patients come to us with queries, and they sort of get resolved or unraveled when they start seeing their own CGMs.
I will just add one thing to that. My dad has been a diabetic for almost 35 years, and he has been supremely resistant to behavior change. He said, "I know everything about diabetes. I'm physics professor. I've figured it out."
Yeah.
So I put a CGM device on him and enrolled him to Fitterfly program. And I just urged him that 3 days you go for a walk after every meal. Normally he used to lie down after every meal. He says, "मुझे नींद आ जाती है." And he was very fond of eating just wheat roti because it's soft and crispy. And I told him 3 days now you eat multigrain where only 50% is wheat. We will add soya and amaranth into it. And I showed him the graphs after day 6. And I said, this is how it was 3 days with walk, without walk, 3 days with multigrain and normal roti. And he himself commented now he doesn't feel sleepy. Now, every time, even after breakfast, he's out for a walk. And his medication dosage has been cut down even after 34, 35 years of diabetes. And his fasting blood sugars or postprandial are much better than ever before. So it can help at all stages of diabetes because, as Shilpa said, we really don't know what is happening inside our bodies until unless there is a device like CGM which is guiding us to make that change. But I also know that some of the doctors get troubled because patients come back with a lot of questions based on CGM.
Yes.
But that's another question to be discussed in this forum.
Actually, that was going to be my next question, because when we did a poll over here, we saw more than 60% of the doctors who are here already use CGM. We know CGM is very good; it gives you a lot of insights. But when I actually go out in the field, I don't actually meet so many doctors who use CGM. They would rather avoid using CGM and all the questions which come back from the patients, and monitoring and actually advising on that. So what is the biggest challenge? How do we make it more commonly used amongst doctors and their patients? Is there something we can do? Or what are the main challenges that doctors face? Arbinder,
Shilpa, I
yeah.
can take up a couple of challenges. I think one of the factors is cost. CGM devices are not affordable for everyone. The Libre Pro devices, they are 2,500 rupees, and actually those devices have a little higher MARD, which is above 10%. And and the other one, the Libre Freestyle, which is more easily available, or the simple Libre device, that is about 4,900 or 5,000 rupees. So one factor is the cost. The second factor is it shows so much of data, and if the patients keep asking about various things, मेरा blood sugar 130 क्यों है, 150 क्यों है, it just becomes very difficult to answer. And thirdly, I think just doctors do not have so much of time to explain their data to the patient because it requires a lot of time to explain what has happened, which has come, and then keeping all the data. And who will remember that 3 days back I had bhindi ka sabji with bhakri versus I had chane ka dal with rice. It's become very difficult to collate all the instances. It's a lot of manual work for the patient, for the doctor, for the healthcare team who is with the doctor and the patient, follow up, maintain that. I think these are the 3-4 challenges because of which CGM device has not seen a massive adoption, but the things are changing. Shilpa, any other challenges you have seen in your practice?
No, I think these are the main ones, and I think the real use of CGM, if I mean, it's to titrate medications, of course, but it also, if you're putting a CGM, it's typically a 14 days. A sensor is good for 14 days. I would say. I think it is just not about collecting data. If you can make changes that time, it is about changing the lifestyle of a person for good. So while you change a medication and start seeing the impact of medications over 14 days, I think if you use that period to change the lifestyle, collect some data and change the lifestyle, it will actually impact that patient way more. But that's the thing, like Dr. Arbinder said, it is extremely time consuming because you have to sit with those charts. And if you have a device which can help you to sort of collate that data and give you suggestions, that would be good. So main challenges, according to me, is the time that you need to spend with the patient using that kind of data.
I will take a minute to shamelessly plug in Fitterfly over here. We can take in the time spent by doctors can be greatly reduced by using our Fitterfly app, and we can do a lot of counseling where it is required, so doctor need not use all that time in the clinic. So that is a plugin. Thank you for the questions in the chat. Please keep asking those questions, and we'll take up the questions towards the end of the discussion. I would go on to the next question right now. So We've been talking about blood sugar monitoring, CGM, nice, very good. So is CGM limited to diabetes and blood sugar monitoring only for diabetes, or can it be used in other disorders also? Dr. Arbinder, give it to you first.
So there are a lot of companies which have started using CGM for just general fitness. They call it the metabolic health. Now, we did a trial in weight loss. While some of the patient did show a insulin resistance kind of phenomena where they showed a spike, but it was not uniform in all the patients. So at least our initial results, we are using in very selected set of patients with PCOS or weight loss, but definitely we are using it extensively in patients having pre-diabetes, because pre-diabetes is the right stage to act, where they are seeing initial worsening of the glycemic responses. As compared to the population which has a HbA1c of less than 5.7, the people who have pre-diabetes between 5.7 to 6.4, they have an exaggerated response. And over there, if we can make a significant behavior change towards fitness, towards right meal combinations and food choices, a lot of these patients, typically 20% progress to diabetes every year, 15 to 20%. The rate of progression from pre-diabetes to diabetes is highest in India. So that rate of progression can be significantly slowed. But for PCOS and weight loss, there has been some initial data, but it's not strong enough data to uniformly use it in all these patients. So until unless the patient has a very high level of intent or is very much affording, apart from that, the clinical use has just not been justified till date. Shilpa, you want to add to that?
No, I agree with you completely. And I mean, we have seen patients who intend to have weight loss using it, but these are very, very highly motivated kind of patients, in whom we can, micro titrate, if that's the word I can use, micro titrate what they're doing. But like Dr. Arbinder said, the real use, if you're looking at preventive health, is using it in pre-diabetes, so that you can, it's a complete U-turn from there. And what we have seen even, everywhere, but also at Fitterfly, is people who have actually used it in pre-diabetes have made very good changes in their lifestyle and sort of ingrained those changes in their DNA, whereby now without a CGM device also, they know what are the right things to do, and they keep following that pattern. So it's not, there are many things that can be unraveled in 14 days because you're eating 14 into 3 meals. So you have a lot of data, and you can change your lifestyle completely and then keep following it, and then probably not need to use this device. A lot of people feel we have to use it continuously. You don't have to. After using it once or twice, you're sort of set and you know what to do. So that's the thing.
Dr. Ajit, Dr. Gaurav will come to your questions. Shilpa ma'am, since I already have you in the spotlight, could you share a few cases which you might have used CGM on, and what insights you could have gathered from that?
So let me share one case with you with CGM. Just give me a minute. Hope you can see my.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is a financial consultant, 41 years old, with a weight of 70 kilograms, a BMI of about 27.3, with type 2 diabetes, who was not on medications. Okay. So what happened is he actually went ahead and bought a glucometer for his father. Probably father was advised to sort of check his blood glucose. And he happened to check his own, which most of us do when we buy anything new. And he found his random blood glucose to be greater than 200. So he confirmed it with lab, and it was still about 200. And then, like most of us are in denial most of the time, you say, "Theek hai, galti se ho gaya, kal mithai khai thi" types. And then when he ignored it, thinking it is temporary, and then later on he did his HbA1c after 6 months to find it to be 9.6. So this is a individual who came to Fitterfly program. And then, of course, his major concern, because his A1C was 9.6, he had all the osmotic symptoms like frequent urination, tiredness, blurred vision, burning feet, all of the above, but he still did not go to a doctor. And he joined the program to get his HbA1c below 7.5 without medication. Now, this is his CGM when he came. Okay, so you can see he was above target range. Time above target range was 78%. So essentially, most of the time of the day, he was above the target range. Okay, and he was about 22% of the time within target range. And these are different kinds of foods that he was eating. So he was eating, for example, he was eating kodo millet with some podi and pongal, and you find that just by eating this kind of food. So here the energy is 412 kilocalories, 65 grams of carbs, and 10 grams of protein, 12 grams of fat, and you will see a rise in blood glucose of about 114 milligrams per deciliter. Now, this simple meal, this is also a home-cooked meal, and it was replaced by a simple homemade meal where instead of kodo millet, a bowl of rice was given. Okay, so yes, 2 bowls of kodo millet were replaced by 1 bowl of rice. But if you look at it, much more vegetables. There was a salad, there was a sabzi, and of course, that day he had paneer at his home. So instead of dal, there was paneer given. Now, if you look at the macro composition, there was a dramatic reduction in carbohydrate from 65 to 41. Protein increased to up to 13 grams. Fat dropped from 12 grams to about 10 grams, and fiber remained consistent. But you will see that because the energy was about 100 calories lesser, carbohydrates was about 20 grams lesser, and protein increased by 3 grams, you find that the increase in blood glucose was only 16 milligrams per DL. So these are small things which you come to know. Now, one of his dinners was neer dosa without oil. Okay. Again, you will find that there was a rise of 92 milligrams per DL with this kind of meal, which was essentially only carbs. Look at it, 55 grams of carbs of 371 calories. When this was replaced with traditionally, if you think, you'll say neer dosa is a lighter meal. It's a smaller meal, but it had more carb. It was more carb dense. Here you will see that although he ate much more calories, but because there was more protein here, his increase in blood glucose was only 23 milligrams per DL. So you'll see that of course, this is estimated HbA1c, but it actually came down, and his time above target range, which was 78, actually came down to 60. And this is just within a week, 40% time in target range. And I'm just going to go ahead because these are only slides on food, but this is at the end of the program. So you'll see that his time above target range was only 28%, as compared to initial 78, and time within the range was 72%. So you will see that these were the changes which happened. So he began with a fasting glucose of 185, and he reached to a fasting glucose of about 130. Post-meal sugars of 284 actually came down to post-meal sugars of 160, and his weight also significantly dropped from 70 kgs to 64 kgs. His initial HbA1c was 9.6. It came down to 7.4. So it was about a 2.2% reduction in his HbA1c. So this is what, this is what actually CGMS does. It tells you how each meal, these things, how each meal is working for you. And this is actually what CGMS can give you, because what are your traditional food habits can be changed, and you can develop into new food habits which have a huge impact on your HbA1c.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have a lot of questions, but I'll just ask one question from my side before I get to the questions from the audience. And I would also like to share CGM in their patients. So on my last question to the panel is, how do we see this thing evolving in the future? Are there any next steps to CGM that we should be thinking of right now? And where do we see this taking us in diabetes management? Dr. Arbinder, I'll start with you, take it to Shilpa ma'am after that.
So I think one of the first and most important thing which ideally should happen, and all the companies and hardware and software companies should effort is how can we make CGM more affordable? Can we have CGM which lasts longer, like a month? Can we have CGM which can cost just 1,000 rupees? Is it possible? If we can do that and match the price of a glucometer, then the widespread use and behavior change will happen even faster. And there's a lot of research happening on non-invasive blood sugar also. There's an article also which came from Apple Health. And we also have been speaking to a lot of companies which are doing non-invasive blood sugar monitoring from just wearing a watch with infrared or kind of spectroscopy or even pulse oximetry. But none of those technologies are nearing FDA approval. So it'll be at least 4 or 5 years. So till that time, we are stuck with the CGM. Till the FDA starts approving with a lesser variation, we are stuck with CGM. And in CGM, I think only longer lasting CGM and cheaper CGM is the two things which I'm hoping which should happen in the next 1 to 2 years.
Shilpa ma'am, any thoughts on this?
No, I completely agree with what Dr. Arbinder is saying, that the cost of CGM, if it comes down, things are going to be much easier.
Thank you. To the audience, if anybody would like to share their experience with using CGM in their patients, I would be very happy to let you come onto the screen and speak. Dr. Atul Ram is here. I know he's been using Fitterfly CGM devices for his patients. So love it if we would like to share some experience. One question from Dr. Garvit is, can we install CGM device anywhere other than hand? Or does it have to be over the triceps? Can it be used anywhere else? No, I have no idea.
Even we spoke to Abbott team. They said they've used it on the thigh, but the results are not accurate. So the Medtronic device and the Dexcom devices, they can be used on the tummy as well.
Yeah.
But the Libre device, the Abbott device, which is most commonly used, it is approved for use only on the upper arm, where the needle size and the thickness of the skin and everything is suitable and is actually approved for use in only that place.
So, Dr. Ajit, you had a few questions. You could unmute yourself and ask those questions yourself. Dr. Ajit? Yeah, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Dr. Ajit.
At different time with the same meal, is there any CGM difference noted?
Sorry, I couldn't hear it.
So Shilpa, Dr. Ajit is asking, with the same meal,
Yeah.
at different time of the day, can there be a difference in the glycemic response?
Yes, sir, we see it very often when we compare breakfast to, say, lunch or dinner. So we all know morning blood sugars are not as well controlled because of the counter-regulatory hormones which are secreted. And typically when we see people eating very high carb breakfast, most of Indian breakfast are very high carbs like poha, upma, or South Indian food, or even parathas, and you will see the blood sugars are much higher as compared to when you actually have it later in the day. So yes, you do see variation of the same food when eaten at different times.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Ajit, you had another question about different millets. What's the difference between having a single millet and mixed millets? Does it make a huge difference in blood sugar levels?
Okay, so again, when I say this, please understand that there is a lot of intra-individual variations when we speak about any food. So like I said in beginning, what holds true for me may not hold true for any other person. What is typically seen is most of the millets are high in fiber. So they should ideally give you a very good glycemic response. But after saying that, some millets, at least in my experience, like ragi or nachni, jawar, tend to increase blood glucose a lot. But if you look at smaller millets like kodo or foxtail or even bajra, they increase blood sugar much lesser as compared to larger millets. Now, whether mixing this will create impact, I feel rather than mixing millets with each other to create one powder, it would be much prudent to mix pulses in it. So instead of just mixing millets, say you're doing bajra, you can mix it with a chana dal or a urad dal and create a atta and make rotis out of it instead of just mixing jawar with bajra, because you're mixing two carb-rich sources together and expecting an impact of lower blood sugar, which is very difficult. Rather, you mix a source which has more protein and more fiber, then you can expect a better response in blood glucose.
In fact, millets may not be healthy for everyone. We have seen enough examples in Fitterfly where patients' blood sugars were rising with ragi.
Yeah.
My particular, whenever I even eat a one jawar bhakri, my postprandials go up by 60 or 70, which doesn't happen when I eat a mixed roti made of amaranth and soya and wheat.
Chana.
So yeah, or chana. So I think these are individual glycemic responses. In Fitterfly, we call this term personalized glycemic response or PGR. And we know that by using technology, you can understand your PGR for different meals. And then these PGRs can help you to decide what is the right kind of diet plan and diet plan for you.
Great. Dr. Arvind, there's another question from Dr. Atul Agarwal about our experience with GDM.
Shilpa, you'd be a better person to answer the GDM query.
Yes, so with GDM as well, we have had great experience because there are a couple of problems which are very peculiar in GDM is titrating their food because their postprandial sugars really go high. Even their early morning blood sugar response is pretty high, even though they don't eat, they don't eat as bad. I'm not saying they eat great, but they don't eat as bad, and it becomes easy for us to track their blood glucoses better. Especially if you want to delay or don't want to, most of the GDMs will come to us and those women will say, insulin nahi lena hai, kuch bhi karenge par insulin nahi chahiye. So, that is the time when, if you look at these kind of reports and actually come down with certain kind of meal patterns and foods which actually work for you, it is absolutely great. It really helps them a lot.
Shilpa ma'am, there's another question for you. Omega-3 fatty acids, how useful it is in diabetes, dyslipidemia or fatty liver? So the role of omega-3 fatty acids.
So if you look at omega-3 fatty acids for high triglycerides, there has been a lot of data and one can use it if triglycerides are really high. But as far as fatty liver is concerned, more data is on vitamin E as compared to just omega-3 fatty acids. So while we find that most of our patients with type 2 diabetes tend to have high triglycerides, and omega-3 fatty acids does great with it. If they also have a grade 2 or grade 3 fatty liver, I think you should also consider vitamin E along with omega-3 fatty acid for better results.
Thank you, ma'am. Opening it up, any more questions, please? Dr. Rajendra is here. He's been a regular audience to our webinars.
So there's a question from Dr. Ashish Kurgaonkar. Is it worthwhile using CGM or diabetic or at-risk obese children?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we have used CGM in 14, 15, 16-year-old children, with type 2 diabetes who have been diagnosed, and the results are comparable to the same as adult. But as I said, in obesity, we are not fully sure what kind of value it adds. It does add value in some of the people because once you have a CGM device on and you can identify some of the foods which are really causing postprandial hyperglycemia, then you can start cutting, and people are very vigilant in maintaining their food diaries when the CGM is on. So it does confer us some kind of behavior change, but the effect has been not very, very, I would say justified to routinely expand the use of CGM in obesity, whether it's a child or an adult. I hope that answered your question, Dr. Ashish.
There's one more question from Dr. Ashish. The correlation between sleep and night shift in relation to altered glycemic response.
Shilpa.
So you'll be surprised, Dr. Korgaonkar, but we have a lot of data at Fitterfly of even shift workers, but also people who have insomnia. So they are actually at home, but they are just unable to sleep. And we typically see that their blood sugars are high in the morning. I mean, a sleepless night or a sleep deprived person actually shows high blood sugars, probably because of the secretion of counter-regulatory hormones, or sometimes when sleep is not there because of stress, anxiety. I think it just adds on to the problem. And our program has a lot of what would you call it, exercises or interventions which are catered towards better sleep hygiene, and they really work. And we have seen that these people actually improve their sleep within a couple of months if there is insomnia. But if it is a shift worker, unfortunately, there is very little that you can do rather than change other things which are surround, because you can't ask them to change their jobs and night shifts to daytime work, but you can work around other factors which can help them to better their glycemic response. But in people with insomnia, we have got some wonderful results where their sleep duration has improved, the quality of sleep has improved. We have some phenomenal results here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you for asking those questions and making this more interactive than it normally is. I would like to really thank everyone over here for being so enthusiastic and being so interactive with us. Open it for a few more questions. We have some time on our hands.
Shilpa, you must also share with the audience some funny incidents of CGM use. Some interesting things which you have seen in the last few years. At least I can tell one. Last week, I'll tell you two incidents. So I was speaking to somebody in UAE. So in UAE, people are very, very fashion conscious. Now, this lady was going out for dinner and she wanted to wear a sleeveless dress. She took out the CGM device. She said, I cannot wear the CGM device while going out for dinner, and evening came back and applied it, then called up and said the device is not working. So that's one incident which I wanted to share. And secondly, the second incident which I've often hear is that people who wear, like especially women who wear tight blouses and something or saris, it's very difficult for them to wear the CGM. Correct. And sometimes the CGM can come off during wearing of those kind of clothes. So all those kind of training. And the third thing is, if you sleep on the side of your CGM, suppose you're wearing the CGM on the left arm and you're used to sleeping like this on the left side, and if you sleep like that for 1 hour, then your CGM device may show a artifactual hypoglycemia. So these are very, very important things to remember. And lastly, I think CGM data becomes inaccurate if you have a hemoglobinopathy as well. So these are important things to understand about CGM at least.
I know. I mean, once when we were seeing at Fitterfly, I was seeing data of somebody consistent hypoglycemia at night, and we were also very worried. And then we came to know that the person was, you sometimes sleep on one side and you just don't turn. You sleep so deep that you don't turn. And then we realized that he was sleeping on one side for a couple of hours and it was consistently showing low sugar. And we thought it's nocturnal hypoglycemia. And we were wondering a lot of things. But then, when he got up and went on other side, sugar went back.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Dr. Tandon, great to see you. Any questions? And we would be happy to take them. Dr. Ashish has another question. Shilpa ma'am, it's for you. Can you speak about meal replacements for odd hour eatings?
Okay, so again, as a dietitian, when we are hungry at 4 o'clock, where the whole world is hungry, we really do not have any great options to eat out. So if I want to eat out, probably the so-called healthiest option I have is a packet of biscuits, which is not healthy at all. We saw Dr. Arbinder's CGM and we know it's not healthy. It does give a peak and then a sharp drop. So that's the time when you can really use meal replacement. And remember, meal replacement and protein shakes are two different things. So try not to confuse one with another. Meal replacement is a package with 50% carbs, 20% protein, 30% fat, whereas a protein shake is only protein. The other components don't exist, although vitamins and minerals are there in both. So if somebody, your patient has diabetes and you are want to giving him meal replacement, that's a good thing, especially if there is, say, a regular insulin given before that, and the regular insulin is also covering that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock time when your patient is, so there is some amount of carbohydrate for that regular insulin. But if your patient is, say, pre-diabetes, then you don't want to give them meal replacement that time you can just give them plain protein powder, okay, as far as it fits into the RDA of that person, and you can, let that time go by without them getting hungry. So it's a very, very good replacement option for a patient.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that finishes off most of all the questions that we have. And if there are no other questions, I will just wait for a minute. If there are no other questions, I think we can close this for now. Just to tell the audience that we have these webinars every month, and you get those emails from me with all the details about the webinar. You can always, if you have any questions for me personally or about the next webinars or any questions, I'm just writing out our email in the chat box. You can save this email and you can write to us anytime you have any questions for us. Please do save this email, and we'll keep you informed of all our upcoming webinars. Hope to see you for all those webinars that we have.
Dr. Ashish Kurgankar is an anesthesiologist colleague in Navi Mumbai.
Oh,
He's very health conscious and very informed about technology.
great, great. In fact, even I recognize a few other people over here because they are a regular audience and love to have them here. Thank you, Dr. Ajit. Thank you for asking those questions and letting us answer those questions. That's what makes this very, very interesting. So thank you, Dr. Arbinder. It was great having you. It was fun and great to actually do the first webinar with you. So thank you, Shilpa ma'am. Thanks for your time. It was very last minute, I know, but you did help us out a lot. Thank you, Shilpa ma'am. Thank you, the audience, for sparing the time on a Wednesday afternoon. Goodbye, Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Nilesh. Thanks, Shilpa. And thanks, audience. Bye-bye.